I was overwhelmed by how much there is to take, how much it requires to take care of something like diabetes.
Every single fluctuating blood sugar, whether it's high, low, whatever it is, has a reason. Every single fluctuation has a reason, right? It's our job to figure out what the reason is.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Healthy Diabetic Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Coach Ken Kniss. If you don't know much about my story, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 25 in 2007. And I'm the founder of Simplifying Life with Diabetes, a diabetes health coaching company that bridges the gap between your medical team and the daily complexities that you face every single day with this condition. Also, I want to remind you guys that nothing that you hear on this podcast should be considered medical advice or otherwise. Please always consult your medical team before making any changes to your diabetes management. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's get right into our guest. We're in this amazing studio. We're going to get right to the guest. I got to sitting down with Graham Hubbard again. If you guys have been listening to the podcast for a long, long time, you know exactly who this amazing person is. He is one of the co-founders of this podcast when it was called the Two Type 1s podcast. So, Graham, thank you so much for being here. As always,
of course,
welcome, man.
Of course.
Yeah.
How long have you had the disclaimer, by the way?
The disclaimer's been on the podcast ever since we first started.
Did it?
Oh, yes.
Because we had one conversation and you decided we better put a disclaimer in. Is that why?
Absolutely, man.
I don't remember it in the very beginning.
I never did it live when we were recording. I always did it after the fact and post editing.
But do you think you posted a couple episodes and then it hit you? I should probably add a disclaimer because
I always added a disclaimer.
That don't know what we're talking
I always
about.
added a disclaimer because my dad is the one that told me to do it in the first place when we first started.
If I remember how I thought about it after talking to you 5 or 6, maybe a dozen times, it hit me. That would be really smart to make sure.
Yes.
Because
especially when we started talking about medical.
Well, I'm not just talking about medical, but it seems in a way taking care of type 1 is opinion based, right? Or it's not opinion based. It's unique to each person, right?
Well, we think that.
No, I think
we think that it's unique to each person.
No, we know this. We just had lunch together and I sat across from you and I said, I'm overwhelmed watching you taking care of your diabetes.
Well, yeah.
My heart was pounding, and I'm like,
I love it because we're not even to the topic yet.
This is shit that I do every day, and it was
it
was overwhelmed. Seriously, I was overwhelmed.
But I don't understand why. It's the same stuff that you've done. Like I'm literally doing the same thing that you do, which is injections.
You want to know what it is?
What?
I was overwhelmed by how much there is to take, how much it requires to take care of something like diabetes.
Oh, of course.
Because I said you sat down with a big ciabatta sandwich. A, that I would never have ciabatta. B, that would be a special occasion. C, we were coming to do something like this. And I was like, I would never in a million years take insulin before an event, before I'm talking. I won't do a Zoom call. And if I know I have a 10 a.m. Zoom call, I mean, I might run, I might get my exercise, but I'm not going to take a correction. If I'm like 200, like I'll just live at 200 while I get to the Zoom call because I don't want to crash. I don't want to. I don't want to be brain zapped. So.
I mean, I've done presentations where I've crashed like 100%. I've not very often, but I have done them.
So do you feel the low, or do you feel your brain kind of turning off?
Both.
And do you get like irritable, or you just think like, I don't have anything on my brain? I don't have anything on my mind.
It's more like I can start feeling the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
I start having a little bit of brain fog, but when you have a presentation, that's the good thing about having the presentation is I can look at the presentation and I got my thought back.
Yeah.
But also you have to remember it's different for me because I have hypoglycemic unawareness, right? So I can be 60 and just hovering there or 65 or 70 hovering there and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right. Where someone like you who's going to have symptoms when you get to 70, 65, 60, and maybe even pretty decent symptoms that is 100% going to affect your mood and how you're working and how you're living in that moment.
Totally.
It's going to be different, right? So like I've feared that before going into a presentation, but it's never really bothered me, or it's never really like been an issue.
Have you ever had to excuse yourself from a client or a speech?
Oh, you're from a client. Heck yeah. I remember I was training at Lifetime and I had to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, this dude just wants it.
No, I mean, all my
he's just
clients
hungry.
know. I mean, all my clients know. Like, I was training at Lifetime one time.
Yeah.
And this was like just when I started the G5, the
Mhm.
Dexcom.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone to like 60 and it was falling.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like 30 some minutes
And
left
it was
in the
notifying
session.
you?
And it was like, oh yeah, I could feel this. So I'm sprinting like down the hall, down the stairs. I'm sprinting to the cafe to get like a banana or something or get something.
Yeah.
I had to grab my wallet. I had to like, and he's just working on himself right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
that
never
was like the most insane one.
One diabetic dream I have, this is such a stupid thing to say, I think about all the time, is I wish CGMs existed when I was in middle school and high school, because I used to be a little bit thicker.
Mhm.
And my mom would go to, there was no Costco at the time, it was Sam's Club. So she'd go to Sam's Club and remember Kudo? Do you remember Kudos bars? I've talked about this, whatever.
Kudos bars.
It used a KU.
You have told
DOS.
me about this before.
She'd get Kudos bars or Rice Krispie treats just because it had, call it 15 to 20 grams of carbohydrates, right? So it was perfect. And I know for a fact, especially my wrestling coach, he's like, dude, this, he just wants to take breaks. He wants an excuse.
Mhm.
He wants to get away from everybody's, doing hit-its. Remember hit-its?
Yep.
You chop your legs, drop to your chest, jump back up.
100%.
He just wants to get out of hit-its. He wants to get out of this and that.
Yeah.
It would have been amazing to have a CGM and just to show him, like, no. But again, they just thought this fat kid needed it. This fat kid can't go more than 2 hours without a Kudo,
Dude,
without
like
a Rice Krispie or a Kudos bar.
I just it's so crazy to think about where we've come. Like where diabetes has come, what's going on. Have you seen, I mean, this is part of like what we wanted to talk about today, but you saw that the China study or whatever, what's going on in China where they think they've cured type 1 diabetes.
It's isolate.
Isolate. Yeah.
Which I thought there's two different topics going on here. There
there
are stem
has
cells,
been.
but then there's, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there has been, because there's stem cells, but then there's also using grown isolate cells from tissue from the person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, excuse me, I think the way this works, the one from China, is she still probably had some beta cell function. Mm-hmm. I don't think, I mean, you obviously couldn't do that and take your own stem cells and replicate them if they're all dead like ours,
mm-hmm.
right? So this girl, I think, is 25 years old, and she was just diagnosed, I don't know, a couple years ago. They did the isolate cell isolate cell, I don't even know.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm remembering this now.
Yeah. And I
for the moment they've cured
to,
somebody with diabetes with isolate cells.
I haven't had a chance to read the whole article, which I'm excited to sit down and like dive into it.
It's all over the place.
But it was really cool because the basically the abstract of it was, for now, a year later after it's a transplant, after the year later of the transplant of these isolate cells, like her body's continuously making isolate cells itself.
That's awesome.
Which is, that's crazy. That's astronomical.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I guess, and I haven't read the study, so maybe I'm wrong on this, it doesn't involve immunosuppressant drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it does. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it's super interesting, man. It's super fucking interesting. It's super interesting thinking about like the future. Everyone continues to complain and, bitch and moan, if we want to say that, about like, oh, when's this cure come? Where's this cure come? And like, if I've had diabetes for 30 some plus years, of course, I'm like tired of hearing that. But I think they're closer than they ever have been before.
I think the thing that I think most about are transplants, actual pancreatic transplants.
They're so,
which usually is going to happen in somebody who has. So I know a girl who actually I met her at Camp Hamwee, where you worked, diabetes camp, the kids diabetes camp here in Central Ohio. She unfortunately fell into dialysis, which got her on a list. When she got the kidney approved, while they're in there, they gave her a new pancreas, which to me was just wild. But it's like a given these days. If you can find the donors and you can find and you're available and you're.
The problem with the pancreatic transplant is the success rate is not very high.
Because it doesn't fix the cells. the cell production the same way, right? Is that the whole
Well,
idea here?
yes, kinda, yeah. Yeah, I guess. But in terms of the diabetes, yes. But in terms of like the other hormonal displacement or hormonal things that the pancreas is in charge of regulating, a lot of times in those scenarios, the success rate is just not very good.
Mhm.
Just like the same with a liver transplant, like a heart transplant, just the success rate of those aren't the greatest because it's a foreign body,
Mhm.
right? So, I mean, but that's why I think the isolate cell transplant is just, it's super interesting.
Mhm.
It's super interesting. And again, I'm excited to
But would it
read
be a
through it.
common? Would it just be? Would you have to get on a list to have that type of?
They'll probably have different requirements because there's no way they'd be able to just roll it out.
Isn't that like the catch-22 of it all, though?
Of course it is.
You have to be unhealthy to get the best
mean,
technology. To
No,
get the best.
get out of here, man. What are you talking about? No, I don't think so. Like, you don't have to be unhealthy to get the best technology.
Not the best technology. For instance, the girl that I'm talking about, her kidneys were failing.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't get a kidney transplant if your kidneys weren't failing. Right?
Wait,
I mean, you wouldn't.
What?
You wouldn't go and get a kidney transplant.
Yeah, but that means
if your
sorry to
kidneys
say,
weren't
but something's not working. Something is unhealthy, and something
yeah, but
negative is.
But you're.
She got it because something negative was happening.
Yeah, but you're also making the argument that you have to be unhealthy to get the best technology. And if we're talking about a transplant,
I said technology. I didn't mean technology. I'm saying the best care. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a dumb thing for me to say though, because obviously diabetics aren't getting the best care. Look at what happened with insulin. I don't hear. Are you as someone who's a little bit more integrated with the diabetes community, or is there still a lot of complaints about the prices of insulin and people?
If you don't have insurance,
have we figured that out a little? Well,
obviously. Well, but that's not obviously, because if you have good insurance, because there's people that are still having lots of problems that have insurance, but their specific insurance company is not covering it, right? So I'm lucky because I'm with Medical Mutual, one of the biggest, it's a big insurance companies. If you're with a smaller, maybe you have a group plan with a bunch of people, or you're on a smaller, insurance plan. Like I heard a story the other day. I was talking to someone and they lost their job. They weren't eligible for Cobra. They automatically lost their insurance.
wow.
So they had to get off the pump. They had to get back on injections. They lost the CGM because their insurance won't pay for any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's crazy. It's crazy what's happening.
I'll throw this out there because it was current events and news. The whole United Healthcare CEO.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, I would never condone. Someone said this, and it's true. Companies screw you over every day. You don't go out and murder them or kill them.
Yeah.
But the argument that people make is that you only know if you've been you only know if you've been there,
screwed.
if you've been screwed over or
yeah.
So
but
what did you
have to think.
did you think that and also mental health, things like that in our that we all face, that almost did you feel like it's no surprise, like something like that was bound to happen eventually?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
With the way people are, with the way mental health is right now, with the way people are getting screwed over with insurance. I mean, we can go down the list of all the things that are wrong with the system. But at the end of the day, like for me, like I don't care how bad things are. Like you don't go murder someone for that.
That's a given.
Right.
That's a given. Without
like if like as an example, right? If Kelly can tomorrow, if my wife tomorrow came down with a chronic illness or came down with cancer or came down with something that was like, there's no way we can pay for this.
Correct.
And my insurance denied everything.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go murder the CEO for it.
Of course.
Right. Like we would try to control what we can control, which is how we live our life.
Mm-hmm.
Other holistic or functional ways to treat that illness or condition.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same thing like that I do with diabetes. Like I'm not just about taking insulin, like, which is why I'm on Afrezza now, which is a completely different delivery system. It's different. It's a completely different type of insulin that is going to do the same thing that I want it to do, but in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like, what do you have in your toolbox that you can use? We can't do anything about not having insulin. We can't do anything about not having a CGM. Technology, we talked about
Not
this
having
earlier.
insurance, for instance.
Right? We can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Okay? What we can do things about is doing all the other little things that are in our control.
Mm-hmm.
Exercising every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Focusing on what you're eating. If I have to ration my insulin because I have to self-pay insulin, I'm taking as little amount of insulin as possible. As little amount of insulin as possible. So what does that mean? I'm going to go predominantly no carb, plant-based diet,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can still live a healthy lifestyle. I can still do the things that I want to do. I'm going to try, if I have a spike, the only other option I have, if I don't have the option to take insulin, is to exercise,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the only other option,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is the only other option. Exercise, allow that tool in our toolbox to help bring us down to good levels.
Yeah.
Is that sustainable? Probably not. I don't know. But there are definitely, I've talked to people on this show that take a ridiculous amount of, or a
Ridiculously low amount.
Ridiculous low amount of insulin.
Sure.
Because they do all the other things correctly. They do all the other things right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So all this talk that we have in our community about how diabetes is hard, and I'm not going to say that it's not. It 100% is. We were talking about that earlier today at
Mm-hmm.
lunch. It is 100% not an easy condition to live with. But I think the number one thing that is important to understand is that if your mental health is not in alignment with this condition,
Sure.
it doesn't matter how your management is set up, because your management and how you treat your blood sugars
Mm-hmm.
is always going to be at risk of not going the way you want it to be, because you're not thinking about all the other variables and all the other factors, because you're so focused on the negative part of living with the condition.
Totally.
Which is why every single program that someone goes through with me, we're talking about the mental health first.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an alignment? I'm literally going through someone in more than A1C right now. It's a 10-week program that with this older, or this, I think she's like 32, 33. But her mental health was such an out of an alignment that we're on session 9 and we still haven't dug into diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But that's what it's supposed to be. But she feels more confident, and even the little adjustments that we've made, her ratios are better. Her A1C is better. Everything is better just because we're aligning her mental health in the right ways. And I think that that's something that people don't recognize or remember, because the doctors aren't telling us that.
Yeah. 2 questions I have for you while you're stalking. Have you ever spoken to somebody that is rationing insulin?
Yes.
On the podcast or in life, just before in life?
In
your
life.
existence?
Yeah. In my existence, yes. I talked to someone on Instagram.
Because of insurance or job loss or type of thing? Really?
Yeah. That this person is rationing insulin.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the person that she lost her job, so she wasn't eligible for COVID.
Crazy.
They wouldn't let her go on Cobra.
Cobra.
Yeah. So then she had to get rid of the pump. She had to get rid of the CGM. So now she's rationing off her insulin because she can't afford to pay $400 for a vial.
And is the rationing, is it an in the moment, or is it, she says, all right, I can allot this much per day, or is it just like what you said, instead of taking 4 units, I'll take 2 and go for a run around the neighborhood?
I mean, I'm sure it's something like, we could
go deep. I feel like I could go so deep into
into this, right?
Which is such a horror. It's like a horrifying thing to think about.
The ration of it, to me, this is what I think about when I think about rationing insulin. The rationing part to me is, there's 2 parts. There's the actual rationing of it, but then there's a fear. There's the other fear part that takes over that makes you try to ration.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fear part of the financial, the fear part of I can't eat as much as I want because I don't have enough insulin, and the fear part of like, if I take too much, like I'm going to go low, or if I don't take enough, then I'm going to constantly be high. Like, so the rationing part is a complex, I think a complex thing that people would go through in that scenario, because there's so many different variables that are going to come up. and so many different stories that we're going to tell ourselves. Like, it's crazy, man. It's a shame that something that was created for humanity in the 1920s to be basically free and cost effective for people, that we have to pay so much money for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's robbery. I think it's immoral. Athletics. This is a good drug for them, is because that mechanism is disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
In type 1 diabetes, I guarantee almost every single one of us, that mechanism is disrupted. So that's why you're seeing a lot of type 1 diabetics take GLP-1s right now at a very, very, very little dose.
I didn't know this.
Oh, yes. Very little dose, because it helps with that dysregulation of the hormones that the pancreas is supposed to help regulate.
Okay.
Right? And even though the pancreas...
Wait, they're taking it because they're overweight, though?
No, they're not. They're taking it because the hormone of amylin and these other 3 hormones that are regulated by the pancreas, that are disrupted because we have type 1 diabetes, okay? They're taking it to help those hormones regulate again.
Okay.
Right? Now, granted, we're not naturally doing it. We're basically synthetically helping these hormones to work properly.
Okay.
Right? Just like it is literally the same way that you would take Synthroid for thyroid problems, or take medication for thyroid problems, because your thyroid is either hyper or hypo, and it messes with all kinds of other stuff.
Okay.
Right? So that's why there's a drug called Synthroid.
Like your metabolism?
Your metabolism,
Okay.
right? So you take something like,
so we're not talking about the
Synthroid.
brain messages telling you that you're full anymore.
No, we are, because
I'm kind of an idiot, so I'm trying to follow.
No, yeah.
you're saying.
So I'm just giving you the example of something like Synthroid for thyroid, because in hypo or hyper, your thyroid is dysregulated because the hormones are off.
Okay. Right? This isn't the case of a type 1 diabetic.
This is the case with not thyroid, right? We're just using that as an example.
Someone with, okay.
Right? So now let's go back to type 1.
Okay.
Okay. So in type 1, because you have these hormones that are disrupted, okay, you can take something like a GLP-1. I don't recommend it for people.
Okay.
Okay. But you could take it, and people do, for type 1 to help regulate these hormones are disrupted, and you can't regulate them on your own because they're dysregulated, because your pancreas is jacked up.
Okay.
Right? Your isolate cells are jacked up, whatever. They're all dead, whatever it is, right?
Now, what issues are those hormones causing in a type 1 that you would take something like that for, though?
That they're not working properly.
But like, I know if you're not talking about weight loss, then what other issues are we talking about then?
Well, again, there's 5 hormones.
Yeah.
And only one of those hormones are regulated for something like weight loss or weight, because it's the hormone that speaks to your brain to tell you, okay, I'm full.
Okay.
Right? Think about this in this context when we talk about obesity, overweight, whatever, right? The number one problem in type 2 diabetes is insulin resistant. Okay. You can throw lifestyle in there 100%, but it's insulin resistant. How does that happen? Because of the way you eat, the way you're not exercising, whatever it might be. Okay. So what happens is, in that thought process, your system becomes dysregulated. The hormones become dysregulated, whatever hormones we're talking about. Right? Now let's just look at amylin as the hormone, right? The hunger cue hormone. If you have a negative relationship with food, if your relationship with food is not the greatest, because you're stressed out about work, because you're stressed out about a relationship, you're stressed out about life, whatever it is, you have depression, and you're using something like food as a coping mechanism, right? Now you throw on the fact that you're becoming obese, and that amylin hormone now becomes dysregulated, and you can't even figure out, you don't even know when to stop eating, right? Of course, there's all kinds of other things. If you're eating tons of ultra processed foods that don't have nutrients, I mean, you're not going to know that you're full, even if that hormone is working in the right way anyway, right? So this is why this is so important for people to understand. All of the fitness gurus or fitness people are like, this is the stupidest thing ever. It's like, you're correct, but you're not correct. It is the stupidest thing ever because people are using it for the wrong reason, right? But if you have metabolic dysfunction, if you have hormonal displacement for whatever reason, and most Americans have metabolic dysfunction and hormonal displacement. That's where something like a GLP-1 on a very, very small dose could potentially help. That has a chronic condition. If I'm a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or a working dad or a working mom, I don't care who it is, and I just want to lose weight, and I haven't tried all of the other things like not drinking soda, exercising, getting enough sleep, lowering your stress levels, like eating good, healthy, wholesome foods. If I haven't done any of that stuff, right? You have no business going on that medication. No business, I believe, right? Do the other things first, because as you take those medications, now you're focused. Now you have to think about all of the other problems that medication might bring on. And one of the biggest one is gastroparesis. Is one of the biggest side effects of GLP-1s is gastroparesis, which is no joke.
That affects your butthole.
Yeah, it will affect your digestive system.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. So no joke. So that's one of the big side effects of using these drugs. But it's also not everyone goes through that. So.
Yeah. I wonder if anybody has ever said this to you so bluntly, but that sounds glorious to me.
What? Taking that drug?
Yeah.
Dude,
I feel like being diabetic for
this
this long, there's sometimes I'm like, man, there are a lot of things I would sacrifice, because let's be honest. I guess drugs probably are the same way. It's so fun to eat. It's so fun to eat,
but it's
man.
not about eating, dude. Like even if you are on a GLP-1, it's not like you can just go eat whatever the heck you want.
This is what I was getting ready to say.
No, it's not like that's not what we're talking about.
But in my head, I'm eating as much as I want because I'm just right.
Okay, all right. Like, but your argument still doesn't make any sense.
It's not an argument. It's an argument. It's a dream. It's a dream of mine.
All right. So we're living in the. I'm not living in the dream world. I'm talking about real life.
Hear me out. Say I took this for a week or two. In my head, I'm eating whatever I want. Right.
In your head, sure. You can do whatever you want in your head.
Well, no.
Stay in your own head. Don't bring me in your head.
If I'm regular, if I'm just Graham, I take insulin. That's it. Right now, I can go crazy until my stomach is pushy. We've all been there before, like Thanksgiving, Christmas. Like you're disgusting, right?
Yeah.
But then your brain goes, oh, you're an idiot. You need to quit eating, right? But if I waited a week or two on these medications, I would be full quicker, and then
you would be full quicker.
But I would feel in my head like I just fucking gorged myself. That was amazing.
Okay, but you still have the negative side effect of gorging yourself and eating shit.
Yeah, but it sounds amazing. It sounds glorious.
You said earlier when we were at lunch that if you could, you would eat pizza every single day. High five to that, by the way. Like, right? So in that context, like, of course, like I could go eat pizza every single day, but there's a specific side effect in terms of eating pizza that I'm going to go through.
Yeah.
High blood sugars, unregulated stuff, because even doing it once a week or every couple of weeks is difficult.
Yeah.
Right? Now you're throwing ultra processed food on top of all of that.
I know.
You're more insulin resistant. We know that.
I wasn't even talking about ultra processed food, just a fat steak and an avocado, and you could just eat.
But why can't you eat that fat steak and an avocado without being on drugs? You crazy person.
I know. I get like the meat.
You're just trying to get the meat argument.
You get the meat sweats.
Dude, I'll take meat sweats all day long, dog.
This is to make light of a silly argument, though. I've always said the worst part about diabetes. I just did it on the airplane ride over here. I saw a guy. Okay, this is gonna ruin my argument, but he had a bag of fast food. Hold on, hear me out.
Yeah.
He had a bag of fast food.
Yeah.
Just like French fry by French fry. He kind of put it away. Eventually took the burger out. Eventually had like a bag. This dude ate for an hour.
Yeah.
Like that to me, most people don't think that is my dream. That is my 30 plus years now of being diabetic. That is my dream.
You want to eat French fries, just eat for an hour.
Not even eat, but here's the thing. And again, we're joking, but trying to be serious. It's not about the French fries. It's just, I'd like to just have a bowl of
why can't
whatever
you?
it eat.
But
I
why
don't
can't
know.
you?
It's like
So, but
I don't
this
do
is-
it. I don't do that. Like, man, I don't do that. Like,
But do you
I'm
not
gonna call
do it
you
because of
ciabatta. I'm
diabetes?
gonna call you ciabatta boy after what you
Fine,
ate
call
for
me
lunch.
ciabatta
'Cause
boy.
I can't. Like,
Call me ciabatta boy.
just sat down
I
casually.
did
with
it
a
one time.
ciabatta.
You know, the last time I ate that.
I'm with you for a couple of hours. I don't know that you're doing that every week or something every day. You could eat
Yeah,
ciabatta every morning. Like,
believe me
like
that
you're
I'm not
cheating on
eating
your wife
ciabatta
with a ciabatta roll. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that. Like, why can't you eat like that every day? I do.
I can't grazing. That's the
fucking
term.
do.
Grazing. I don't know. Grazing doesn't work, man. And in my head, as we're arguing, I'm like, gotta be awesome if you could take like a drug that doesn't cause insulin spikes and this and that. I'm like, oh well, duh, that's insulin, right? No,
Yeah.
wait, yeah,
Yeah.
blood sugar spikes.
Yes.
But
Yes.
even that, it's so
But
it's so much more complicated than that. Because
okay.
my thing is the timer always starts. The moment I take insulin, it's like, all right, 3 hours. How long is it going to take me to, we said it today. We sat down and we're like, we're like such nerds. We're looking at the ciabatta. We're both staring at it. And I'm like, how much would you take for this? How much would I take for this? And you kind of were like nonchalant, like maybe I won't finish it. But I was like, dude, but if I don't finish it, I'm going to crash. Like I have to be exact with the breakdown of what I'm taking with this ciabatta because it has to, and it's like a stressor for me, right? So, I guess it's a positive stressor versus in the context of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
though.
So I think this is really good that we went down this part of the rabbit hole because this is important for people to understand. Okay. There is a way that you can eat that whole thing. Okay. And not have to worry about a blood sugar spike and not have to worry about the crash if you don't take it, if you don't finish it.
Mhm.
And the problem is, I've talked about this so many times. The problem is synthetic insulin, which is just regular insulin that we all use, Novolog, Humalog, Levemir, Fios, whatever it might be, fast acting insulin. The problem is when you take synthetic insulin, you're fighting 3 uphill battles. You're fighting the first part of the dose in terms of how long do you actually have to pre-bolus? How long is this thing going to take to actually get into the bloodstream, get into the cells, and actually start working and lowering your blood sugar? That's the first thing you're fighting. The second thing you're fighting is actually being able to take enough to be able to cover for this.
Yeah.
When you're at a restaurant, that's hard.
Correct.
Right? The third thing that you have to combat is how long that takes for it to get out of your system. So
The food or the insulin?
the insulin. So you have to think about all 3 of those components on top of how much protein are you getting, how much fat are you consuming, because that's going to take longer to digest, right?
Yeah.
So the digestion of that specific food matters
Yeah.
when you're taking synthetic insulin. Wouldn't it? And you alluded to this. Wouldn't it be great if I could just take a drug and not have this crazy blood sugar spike? Well, you can. It's called Afrezza.
Yeah.
It's called inhaled insulin.
Yeah.
Because it works so fast and because it's out of the system so fast. Now, there comes its own challenges for sure.
Yeah.
Right? It has its own challenges.
For instance,
just
working
like,
fast to someone like me who's very insulin sensitive.
yes, but that's why you don't take as much, right? So for me, I don't take Afrezza if I'm eating a banana. I don't take Afrezza
Really?
if I'm eating like just a
Really?
little bit of fruit,
Really?
right? Because it's going to be too much.
That's crazy.
It's going to be too much.
Oh, but
So
you're
there's-
still taking insulin.
I'm still taking
see.
synthetic
I see.
insulin,
I see, yeah.
right? So there's an art form to that type of a management system. And that's why us figuring out what works for us is so crucial. Because for me, I'm taking 2 different types of insulin.
Yeah.
I'm taking 2 different types of insulin. So how I utilize both of those tools is completely different. How I utilize both those tools and how I manage diabetes is completely different than how you do it. Right? Which is why when we were looking at those 2 big pieces of ciabatta bread, you're like, oh, well, I gotta know exact. And I was like, I don't even care, because if I don't take enough, I can take another hit of Afrezza and it's coming down like that.
Yeah, that's a good argument for it. I get that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
now on the flip side, if I wasn't taking Afrezza as I was before 6 months ago, I would have to be more strict, or not more strict, but I would have to be more precise on how much insulin I was taking. The pre-bolus would have to be right on point, right? I'd have to understand how much protein I'm using, or how much protein am I eating?
Consuming, yeah.
How much fat am I consuming? How long is this predominantly going to start digest?
Mm-hmm.
When I get to the 2-3 hour peak of using synthetic insulin, is that going to be enough to take all the protein, to take all the fat, right? You mentioned sitting down eating avocado and a big freaking thing of steak. There's hardly any carbohydrates there,
Yeah.
right? So that's going to be a very small amount of insulin that you take. And maybe it has to be micro doses over the span of 3 hours because it's going to digest way slower.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the art form of managing diabetes. And people hear me talk about this and then they're like, that's way too much information. That's way too much stuff to keep track of. I'm like, it is, and it's not. It is because it is a lot of information, but it's not because once you start understanding the minutia of how to think about it, which is what coaching is all about, is help you to start thinking about that stuff. But once you understand the minutia of all of that, everything becomes so much easier. Confidence increases and there's no worries.
Totally.
If you make a mistake, like if I make a mistake, all right, cool. Not a big deal.
It's not really a mistake. It was just a tough day of being diabetic though, right?
I'm talking about in the moment of not taking enough
Oh,
insulin.
okay, yeah.
Right? I'm not talking about
your
like,
reaction to what you did.
my reaction is like to that ciabatta and only
do you look at it as a
insulin.
Mistake though? Do you ever think about that? Like I made a mistake, or you just say, chalk it up to having a bad day.
I'll
wake up tomorrow and try to.
It depends on what it is, right? I don't live my life as a diabetic as in like, oh, well, today was a really hard day, so I'm just chalking it up and I'll start over tomorrow. No, every day is like every day, right? For me, it's like if I miss dose, that's the only reason I ever go high. I miss dosed.
But I think the opposite, to play devil's advocate, I think I do the opposite of you, because there's a lot of power in that. Is today sucked? That doesn't mean you carry it until tomorrow.
100%.
Just like anybody who's a normal person.
Yeah.
Today might have been shitty, but
just like anybody
you don't carry
else.
that attitude with you into the next day, right?
But myself, just like anybody else, is going to have a bad day. Like I've had the last 2 or 3 days have been not great.
Mm-hmm.
I've been not great. But my job as the diabetic is to not just chalk it up as like, oh, this is a bad day. That's not my only thought process, right? I have to reflect on why it was a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, that bad day is going to keep repeating itself.
Yeah.
If you don't get to the bottom, or you don't understand, or if you're so overwhelmed and like you can't figure it out, like that's what you have to overcome.
Yeah.
A really good friend of mine said one time, or another really good coach said one time, every single fluctuating blood sugar, whether it's high, low, whatever it is, has a reason. Every single fluctuation has a reason.
Yeah.
Right? It's our job to figure out what the reason is.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't understand the reason, you can't fix it next time.
Yeah.
People don't think that way.
Yeah.
Graham.
Well, every action has a reaction. That's science, isn't it?
It is, but people don't think that way when we talk about diabetes. We do, because it's second nature to us.
Yeah.
Whenever I go high, I say to myself, dang, did I take enough insulin? I must not have.
Yeah, you go back and reflect
or
on
the
what you could have
timing
done
was
there,
off,
for sure,
right?
sure.
The timing was off, whatever it might be.
But
man.
that's to the person's point of what you said, and I think I've learned this in diabetes. You're better through experience.
100%. They're all
Because
lessons.
you made a comment that someone said, how do you keep track of all this stuff? How do you?
Yeah.
I've never taken notes. You just eventually know.
It becomes muscle memory.
But again, that's what happened with me sitting in front of you having lunch. It's that, how do you do it so differently in a way that I do it? And you're saying things that are great to hear, but I'm like, where am I gonna stash that in my bank of memories and things like that? Or how would you write something like that down and know when to pull it up or whatever, you know? So I had mentioned earlier though about having a second question, and I wanted to ask you this based on, we'll just change directions again.
We'll just change the subject.
Let's not change the subject, but it's cool to hear that. It's honestly, it is very exciting. I don't think it solves anything, but I think that is diabetes, right? It's like a snowflake. It's unique to everybody.
Yeah. Well, before you change the subject, I want to mention one more thing, right? Because you asked me about, like, do I think about the things that happen as mistakes?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Hmm.
But in the same context, if I'm up against something that I haven't really seen very often, right? Something happened, some variable, whatever it might be. For me, because I don't ever do it, a variable of like flying might happen. If I go flying, I have this crazy fluctuation. Maybe that's the variable that I didn't take into 100% into account.
Flying what?
Flying on a plane.
Oh, you said it in a way like you're gonna go flying. I didn't know
I'm
what
Superman,
you meant.
man.
Okay.
I'm Superman.
Okay.
So that might be a variable that doesn't happen on my daily basis, right? That's a lesson for me.
Yeah, totally.
Where if I don't take enough insulin when I knew I should have taken more, to me, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
I don't need to learn anything from that.
Yeah.
It is just, it's a straight up, I should have taken
You're making
more.
a positive out of it because you're saying you're making a positive out of a negative. You're just saying I'm gonna learn from this and correct it, and
yeah,
which I guess I do the same thing. It's more of, like I said, it's an attitude. It's what you said. For the sake of your mental health, go to bed happy. Know that tomorrow's a new day, 365 days in a year, and But
Yeah.
again, I do a lot of things that are not milestones, but like your A1C, for instance. If it's a little high, okay, you got 3 months to work on it or whatever. So
Yeah.
let me ask you something
Yeah.
that I've never thought about this, but I do know in my experience what it's like when you have an endocrinologist. Is it possible to be type 1 diabetic but not have an endo?
Oh yeah.
And what does that look like? How
Usually you go to a primary care physician. A lot of primary care physicians can still prescribe insulin.
okay.
So,
But don't you still need to be getting regular? So there's nobody in the world that has type 1 diabetes, but they don't have any kind of doctor though. There's no primary.
no, I bet there is. 100%
and
especially when you first start.
And I guess what would that look like? You just getting?
I spent almost the first year without an endo. Like, think about that.
I get okay. Yeah.
Right? I went and saw my primary care
overwhelmed.
physician.
I just got overwhelmed.
I went and saw my primary care physician, and he basically prescribed my
remember
insulin
this, yeah.
needs. Right? So
I like, by the
100%.
way, I noticed you now say, now that I've been diabetic for almost 20 years. You stole that from my book. Yeah, I get it, bro.
It hasn't been 20 years.
2007, you said. So you're coming up on it. Good for you.
Almost 18.
It's nice to say, right?
Yeah. May would be 18.
I got you beat by a lot, but
You do. I won't catch up to you
I
unless
say
you die.
30. I figured I would say 30 plus years now because I'll probably wait till 40.
Yeah.
Then I'll be like 40 years.
Yeah.
I met a lady who's had diabetes for 68 years. Just this skinny, older. I mean, obviously, she's older. She's 80. But man, I was like, that's sweet. That's a cool number.
Yeah.
I was like, that's very specific, 68. She's like,
Yeah.
I do it. And that's what she said. She goes, I say it every year how long I've been diabetic.
Yeah. That's powerful, man.
But I think I did 20, 25. Yeah, maybe I did like 20, 25, 30. Now that I'm at 30, it's like being, I'll be 40. 30 years of diabetic. I'll be 40 next year. So, it becomes just another number anymore. Go ahead. That got distracted with what you're saying.
No.
I guess my point is my endo has said to me, if you don't visit us every 6 months or whatever, we can't keep writing you scripts. We're not going to write your prescriptions or something like that. And then,
Technically, I think it's a year, but if you
you
go
know what I'm
past
saying?
Yeah,
You
I know
what I
what
mean?
you're
What if
saying.
you don't have any other, when you have no job, no insurance, but you have
You go to an urgent care.
but wouldn't the
you go
urgent
to-
care eventually have to, isn't
They're
there
not- they
something in
can't- but
place that
can't-
would,
They can't prescribe, like, I don't think they can prescribe a medication going forward, right? They can give you a prescription for a one-off,
yeah.
but you have to have some type of medical professional that can sign off and say that they're treating you
Yeah.
to get insulin.
It sounds like
Okay?
such
So,
a nightmare.
But here's the other thing that I want the people that are listening, watching, whatever you're doing, if you don't have insurance, here's the other thing I want you to think about. And that is telehealth. If there's one positive that we can take from COVID is the fact that now a lot of physicians are doing telehealth, right? I did an episode with an amazing PCA, so an endocrinology physician's assistant. She's a diabetic, a couple months ago. And she said they do so much telehealth is ridiculous. They have people that are coming from 2, 3, 4, 5 hours away. They're in Texas just to see them.
Totally. Yep.
Because they don't have any other option.
Yep.
Right. So normally when you go and see an endocrinologist, establish new care, you have to actually go in person. But then you might not have to go again for 6 more months. But you can still do telehealth visits, right? You can still go do blood work at your local, we've got LabCorp here. Like if I didn't have an endocrinologist or an actual practitioner, and like, let's say I was seeing someone in freaking Illinois or something like that, I could easily just drive there once or twice a year to see that person, right? Get updated stuff, but then do telehealth all the other times.
Yeah.
Right? That is an option for people.
I think the way telehealth, you're right. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I think the way telehealth is, you have to be in state.
Yes. Yeah.
So Cleveland to Columbus. I mean,
even
Columbus to
Columbus. It's actually not telehealth that you have to be in state. It's the practitioner you have to be in
of
state.
Course, yeah.
Because I was asking that PCA about that. I was like, well, do you guys get people from outside of Texas? She's like, not really, because one, they have to drive here. And 2, we're not licensed to practice outside of Texas. So what that means is that if someone's in surrounding states, they can't be doing, I believe they can't be doing things without seeing you in their office at least once or twice a year. That's how they can get around that, like being able to treat whoever.
That's what I've always heard.
So, but I could be wrong about that.
To make light of a serious topic, though, I thought you were going to say, if you don't have insurance, date a diabetic.
I mean, you could say that.
Or you could buy a pig or a cow, right? Because that's where they get synthetic insulin from.
No, they don't get that from.
Yeah, they do.
Not anymore. We don't do.
When did that start?
When did
Where they get
start?
it? Where do they get it from? Yeah, it comes from pigs or cows, bro.
No, it doesn't. It's created in a lab, Graham.
Oh, it's synthetic, duh.
It's synthetic insulin.
When I first was diabetic,
yeah.
Oh, that's changed.
Oh yeah.
When did that change?
First, 90s maybe.
The 90s make it sound
when
like
Novolog, Humalog started coming. I don't know.
Jesus, how old are we?
When like synthetic insulin came out, I don't know. But yeah, I know because I've talked to people
such an
that
idiot
used
that
to be
you've
on
said
pig
this
insulin.
many times, and I never until now. It just hit. I am having an aha brain moment that okay, you've said synthetic a million times.
Oh yeah,
interesting.
Lab made.
I got to look this up. To go back to the beginning of this episode, that's why we do a disclaimer because I don't even know what I'm talking about. Again,
But that's why this relationship works.
But I'm
so
such
well.
a good consumer of. I feel to toot my own horn, to pat my own back. I'm such a good consumer of what's been put in front of me, and I feel I've always felt so blessed. And we can't go down this rabbit hole because it is a rabbit hole. You know, when I was diagnosed, I told you I was admitted to the hospital for days and days. The education I've gotten, education, medicine, technology. Community.
You were in for 5 days, dog.
Community. I mean, I've had everything. Insurance. I've had parents. This goes as far as my parents gave me the right attitude. My parents gave me the right, you got to take care of independence.
Dog.
Man, like it's crazy.
Now you brought this up. Damn it, we have to go down this rabbit hole.
No, don't go this out.
Yeah, we have to do
There's
it.
not enough time.
I'm gonna do it in 2.5 minutes. Okay, maybe longer.
Okay,
maybe 30.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So, guys heard it here. We only have 30 seconds left. But what the most I'm trying to think about the best way to phrase this. One of the things that irritates me the most is hearing your story and then even thinking about my story.
Mm-hmm. I think about that too.
Right? Because
they just prescribed you insulin and
not even that.
Slapped you on the butt.
Not even that, dude. It's which just doesn't even happen in adolescent diagnosis anymore, really. You were in for 5 days, got all the education, You were in for long enough for your parents to like
Acclimate themselves to what's happening.
acclimate and kind of, you know, process everything. You guys had crazy support within that 5 days in terms of education, whatever community. They told you about Hamway in there. Like they told you about JDRF in there. They told you and educated you about all these things. That does not happen anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially in the adult population. You're diagnosed as an adult in the adult population as an adult, man, you are lucky to have a really good situation and scenario.
Sure.
Most of the time you're out of the hospital because they're focused on getting you safe, treating your either your DKA, treating your high blood sugar, whatever it is, giving you some basic understanding and knowledge, and then sending you the heck out the door.
Yeah.
Right. In adolescence, it's maybe 48 to 72 hours, depending on the hospital, depending on how much information you need. I mean, I think they leave it to the parents or whatever. Like, okay, do you guys want to leave yet? Like, which is good, but the type of education and how it's being delivered is not the same.
Yeah.
From when you were diagnosed.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time.
Dude, did I ever tell you I was admitted when I got an insulin pump? I was in the hospital for 72 hours when I got a pump.
See, this is,
and that would have been the 90s. No, that would have been like 2004, 2005, something like that. I think I might have just started college. It was not in the 90s. The 90s.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, man, I don't know. And we'll have to say, this is part of the disclaimer too, right? Because
disclaim away.
I talk a lot of crap about the medical system.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that.
Yeah.
Everyone that listens to this show knows that. I talk a lot of crap about the medical system because it's not that it's broken. It just needs to, the way things are done could easily be fixed is the irritation for me. Right. And the irritation of like how much information that we're expecting to get from our endocrinologist, to get from our family practitioner, to get from our doctors that we're not getting because that's not what that relationship's for. That irritates me.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I understand. Okay. And I talk a lot about them, but we need them.
Yeah.
We 100% need them.
Yeah.
We need them to help us stay safe. We need them to help us with our prescriptions. We need them to help us with a little bit of understanding on how to make adjustments as needed. But that's about it. Everything else is on you.
Well, it goes back to your point about attitude. It's attitude.
Well, yeah.
You take bits and pieces of the lessons you get along the way. Even your doctor, you don't have to. Your doctor is giving advice based on their experience, based on what they're studying, based on what the clientele. I live in Orlando now. My GP meets with a lot of older, elderly people. Her advice for me isn't gonna. I'm 38 years old. I've been diabetic for 30 years. I'm even more so. I'm not stubborn, but I'm gonna do things my way. Like I'm gonna do it my way. That's my point. Is like take it, and then go and do it your way. But be educated about it, and don't be stupid. And right.
Yeah, but it's not even don't be stupid because the problem is most people aren't educated about it because they're not being told the fine nuances that we constantly talk about. Mm-hmm. The fine nuances that I always talk about, right? Thinking about all of the variables, thinking about the variables that are not just on a piece of paper that says these are the things that affect blood sugar, but also what are the things that constantly affect your blood sugar? Yeah. What are the things that constantly are mentally fatiguing for you? Right? Those things are not being talked about. And that's the education piece that we need to actually figure out what works for us. And if we're not being told that by a doctor and we think that's where that information should be coming from, it's no wonder everyone has depression. It's no wonder why all kinds of diabetics are having such a hard time outside of the insurance piece and taking insulin. Yeah. Because they're not getting the strategic understanding of how to live with diabetes. Yeah. Because dosing for insulin is a small part of how we manage diabetes. But everyone thinks like, oh, my doctor is going to give me all this information. Yeah. No, they're not. They're going to give you the basic things to keep you safe, which is, unfortunately, how can I keep you from going low? Yeah. That's
Totally.
it, which
Yeah.
which I think is a very important thing. We don't want to go low, but how do you proactively react to going low? Because
Yeah.
you can't not go low.
Yeah.
The only way that happens is if you don't eat any carbs and you restrict your eating and you eat a low amount and you take a low amount of insulin. That's how you do that. But who wants to live like that?
Yeah.
I don't want to live restricted,
Yeah.
right? If I was living that like that, I wouldn't have been able to eat that humongous ciabatta sandwich.
I'm gonna take
Right?
that with me. I like that. Insulin is the medication, but it's such a small.
It's such a small
Like, for
piece,
instance, me
man.
traveling here this weekend, I know as long as I have my insulin, I'm good to go. But to your point, in the grand scheme of things, it's just one.
You said something to me, and this is the last point. You said something
But
to me.
I wanted to make fun of you
Okay,
at the end too.
cool.
Go ahead.
That's always what happens with you, man.
Go ahead. Last point.
Last point I want to make, right? You said something to me in the car when we were driving here, okay? And you said, what would you do if you didn't have technology or insulin, you were out in the wilderness?
I know. That was going to be the topic of today.
Right?
We didn't even get to hit
We
on
didn't
it.
even get to hit on it, right? So at the end of the day, if you don't have insulin, what are you going to do? Because
Die.
that could be a potential thing that happens.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe you might die eventually, but I want to tell myself this, I think I could survive without insulin. By exercising,
Yeah.
by having a good positive outlook on life,
Yeah.
right? By not eating carbs,
Yeah.
right? And just basically eating plant-based stuff,
Yeah.
right? That aren't going to really spike you, and using exercise to help keep me as level as possible.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, maybe we couldn't because we need background basal insulin, but I think that
Yeah.
it's an important piece to understand,
You just said it.
right? It is an important piece to understand, because if you are rationing your insulin, there are ways that you can continue to ration and still live a good
Yeah.
life.
We've talked about me coming on more often. Put a bookmark in that. Well,
Yeah.
let's bring up this topic, because that's the note that I took for today.
Yeah.
And you've already said a couple things. You got my brain going in a million directions. But the thing I wanted to end on is fatiguing a word.
Fatiguing?
You said fatiguing.
Did I say
Yeah,
fatiguing?
you might want to look that one up for your own
Yeah, that's
education.
definitely not a word. Can you believe this dude right here? I can't believe this guy. Fatiguing.
Oh my God. good time.
Yeah,
All
fatiguing is not a word. So,
All right, friend.
everybody, thank you. Thank you, man, as always, for coming.
Of course,
Everybody,
dude. Happy.
thank you for joining us. If you're listening to this on audio, this episode will definitely be on video as well, so you can see us just bicker back and forth like you hear all the time. So this video will be on video. It'll be on YouTube. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you guys next time.